Hello. This assembly was given to the students at Prior Park College on the morning of September the 5th, 2025. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, some of you may recognise that. It is referred to as the Pledge of Allegiance, and in 46 of the 50 United States, this is often how the school day will start. Every student is asked, though not required, to stand and pledge their allegiance to a piece of cloth and the republic for which it stands. Now, I shall freely admit that as an Englishman, I've always found this ceremony a little silly. The flag certainly matters in America, though. Last week, their president issued an executive order to prosecute people who may choose to burn their flag in protest. Next year, the USA will be 250 years old, but that's still a relatively young nation. Prior Park College sits in the heart of England, and England, by way of contrast with America, is well over 1,000 years old. I suppose I've always thought that flags were a game that a young country played. When countries need to convince everybody in them that they really are one nation, indivisible, then the symbols of their national identity matter. In England, though, we've known we're English for centuries. England existed for around 800 years before the USA was founded, so surely we don't need flags, do we? I mean, of course, we have them because you must in the game of nations. When the Lionesses, England women's national football team, won the European Championship this summer, we saw the English national flag waved by fans, by pundits and by politicians. What would we have done if we didn't have a flag? However, we aren't one of those countries where a symbol of a national identity was going to matter an enormous amount outside of those big sporting events. Or are we? Until this summer, it's been rare to see national flags flying in this country outside of royal weddings or those big sporting events. However, they're everywhere right now. This summer, flags have been popping up all over the place due to a grassroots campaign called Operation Raise the Colours. Now, this group has displayed flags in public places. They've primarily used two flags, the English flag, known as the St. George's flag, and the Union flag, or Union Jack, which is the flag of the United Kingdom. Now, last weekend, I drove over 80 miles along the M4 motorway, and every bridge I drove under had one or both of these flags draped across it, fluttering in the breeze. People have made the effort to go out and tie a flag to a bridge. In other parts of the country, flags have been appearing on lampposts, tied up high, so that they can be seen by everybody walking or driving by. People have even been painting red crosses on mini roundabouts on the road to make them look like the English flag. The closest mini roundabout to our school gates, just outside here, had a red cross put on it a few days ago. So those putting flags up and painting them on the street, they say they are doing so to promote patriotism, the love of your country. Other groups oppose the putting up of flags, though, with several anti-racist organisations saying that these flags are being put up to intimidate immigrants. Last week, all schools in Bath were written to by our local safeguarding team to tell us that some flags are being flown to intimidate and as part of a hateful ideology. However, the Prime Minister, when he was asked about the flying of these flags, said that patriotism was an important thing to him and that he absolutely supported those putting up English flags. So is flying a flag racist? Or is flying a flag patriotic? Well, it seems it very much depends on who you ask. In a recent UK poll, 41% of people said that people who were putting up flags were doing it because of pride in Britain and support for the flag, whilst 42% said that it was being done to make a political statement against immigrants. This is clearly an issue which divides people, and that is, sadly and peculiarly, ironic, as flags are meant to bring people together. The study of flags' history and symbols and how they are used is called vexillology, which comes from the Latin word vexillum, meaning a Roman flag used in the army. So there may have been flags used in 11th century China, 11th century BC China. The Roman Empire used flags, and it seems that the tradition of flying a flag with one side on a pole was started in the early Islamic period. Flags became incredibly useful at sea for identifying which navy a particular ship belonged to, with a skull and crossbones flag showing you didn't belong to any navy, but were instead a pirate. Mostly though, flags being used by countries rather than royal families or powerful individuals didn't really start until the modern period. The US flag and the tricolor flag of France both developed in the late 18th century and were used to try and unite a new nation. This flag trend developed over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries as modern national states were formed. National flags often existed before the country they represent came into being. So displaying a flag can be a sign that you support the right of that country to be an independent nation state. Flags are sometimes banned when people want to stop other groups using them as a means of political expression. Flying a flag is never a neutral act. Now, over the past few years, there have been some flags which have been very prominently displayed in this country, either in real life on public buildings in the UK or digitally on social media feeds as a sign of support for a particular cause. The most prominent recent flags have probably been the Ukrainian flag, the Pride flag, and the Palestinian flag. In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and the Ukrainian flag was suddenly everywhere in the UK. People hoisted it and posted it as a sign of their support for Ukraine. This is another example of a national flag, which dates from the mid-19th century. The Pride flag, by contrast, has been around for a little over 40 years and is often flown during June, Pride Month in the UK. Pride is a movement focused on acceptance of and equal rights for LGBTQ people as a social group. Now, you will often see this flag and the colours of this flag across buildings, and nowadays across many company logos throughout the month of June. The Palestinian flag has been the official flag of Palestine since 1988 and has been very visible in the UK since the war in Gaza began. It's commonly used nowadays to show support for the Palestinian cause in its war with Israel and for the people of Gaza. These three flags are now widespread across the UK. However, not everybody is happy with this. In a recent poll, 25% of people said that if their neighbour displayed a pride flag outside their home, they would feel more negatively towards that person. There have been complaints about healthcare professionals wearing Palestinian flags whilst at work, as it might create an intimidating environment for Jewish patients. All flags are political, and everyone who chooses to display or post a flag is then making a political statement. Those people who've chosen to support Operation Raise the Colours are also making a political statement. The problem with flags is that they have no subtlety. They're a blunt instrument, and they may mean entirely different things to the person putting the flag up than they do to the people who might be walking beneath it and see it waving on the lamppost or the bridge. There are only very few flags which don't fall into this bracket and which all people would typically recognised as meaning just one thing. Perhaps the very best example of this is the flag of Nazi Germany, the swastika. Now that flag is inextricably associated with Nazism, with the Third Reich, with racial hatred and with genocide. That flag is illegal to display both in Germany and Austria and other European countries. Germany now displays its beautiful black-red-gold, or Schwarz-Rot-Gold flag in German, which has a proud democratic history. The swastika flag is not illegal in the UK, but you don't see them for sale on flag websites or in shops, and anyone displaying such a flag is making a choice to associate with a hate-filled ideology. With nearly every other flag, though, there is at least some room for interpretation and doubt. So I've been thinking a little then about how I view the flying of flags. I shall be honest and say that I think that the painting of St George's flags on many roundabouts is mostly intended to make an anti-immigrant statement. I don't feel particularly comfortable with the British flag being flown from lampposts or road bridges. Both the Union Jack and the St George's flag have a complicated history. It is undeniable that both flags have been used by racists and by bigots, by football hooligans and by British fascists. The Union Jack was the flag of the British Empire. That empire has a complicated history, which I shan't go into here. However, it is indisputable that forces marching under that flag occupied territories and colonised people. It isn't, perhaps, totally unreasonable then to suggest that the descendants of those same people might feel that the Union flag is a flag of repression. Yet, at the same time, it was forces fighting under that same flag which helped to liberate the world from the evils of Nazism. It was ships flying under the Union Jack which enforced at great cost the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade and saved millions of lives in the process. As I said, it's complicated. The Union Jack and the St George's flag certainly have problematic histories, sometimes proud histories, and sometimes discreditable ones. Given all that, it feels horribly wrong to surrender ownership of them to those using them to protest against the number of immigrants arriving in the country. By no means are all those flying these flags racist. The intent behind the flying or painting of flags is something that I suppose can only really be known to the person choosing to display it. When a flag has a complicated history like the British and English flags do, there is an inclination by some to hide it away and to only see it through a negative lens. As a British nation and as an English nation, we've probably been a little ashamed of our flag over the past few decades. This slight uneasiness about showing our flags is in marked contrast to countries like America, who pledge their allegiance every single day. Such open and profound statements about who we are, they seem a little un-British. However, if we don't make such statements, then our national symbols run the risk of being appropriated by movements and causes which are even more un-British. So I think that we probably need to work quite a lot harder to reclaim these flags and to properly celebrate them. We should stop displaying them on lampposts and bridges. It looks tacky, and the intent behind putting them there is by no means clear, and so it can be and has been misread as intimidating and aggressive. At the same time though, we should start celebrating those flags properly. What if every publicly owned building, every hospital, every school, every fire station had to have a proper flagpole on them with the Union Jack flag? What if every public sector employee had to wear a flag pin or a flag badge on their work clothes? What if any business that wished could get a subsidised flagpole to fly a Union Jack properly above their door? If we started to take our flags more seriously. If we were actually proud of it, then we might stop agonising about it, and we wouldn't then let it be able to be used by racists. With that in mind then, we're looking into getting a flagpole here at Prior Park. We will be able to use it to proudly display our school flag, which has the symbols of St. Peter and St. Paul on it. We will also be able to use it to proudly display our nation's flag, the Union Jack. We will also be able to use it to fly the flags of the many other countries which members of our diverse community come from on various national days. We can use flags to celebrate and to educate. Doing so means we can take a stand against those who use flags to intimidate. Flags should be used to bring people together, and we can all do a little bit to help with that. Thanks very much for listening.